after the bumper Q2 GDP growth that came in at 8.2% on Friday. We'll tell you what to expect from the market along with Rohit Srivastav today. And of course, the all-important Elon Musk podcast with Nikhil Kamath. Elon Musk says Indians have contributed to the growth of the United States. We'll bring you an excerpt of that on the show. You're watching Morning Brief at 9. Morning Brief at 9 on Monday morning right here on News 9. Here are the headlines that we're tracking for you. Government lines up 9 major economic bills for the winter session of Parliament, including 100% FDI in insurance, new excise and cess on tobacco and pan masala, and a unified security market code. India and Russia are all set to seal major military logistics pact enabling rapid deployment of troops, warships and aircraft ahead of the Modi-Putin summit to begin on December 4th. Tesla chief Elon Musk praises Indian talent as vital to US innovation while calling for balanced immigration policies and stronger border controls during conversation with Zerodha's Nikhil Kamath on a podcast. Cyclone Ditwah nears Tamil Nadu coast with red alerts, flooding and relentless rain, bringing rough seas, gusty winds and widespread waterlogging across southern states. Sri Lanka also continues to battle the devastating aftermaths of Cyclone Ditwah as the death toll has now crossed 200 with more than 218 people still missing. SoftBank backed Meesho to open 5,421 crore rupee IPO on December 3rd with strong grey market premium as home furnishing brand Wakefit launches its 377 crore rupee public issue on December 8th amid rising investor interest in consumer-focused companies. New SIM-binding rules mandate active SIM in devices for using WhatsApp, Telegram and other messaging apps, ending multi-device access and enforcing stricter cybersecurity compliance nationwide. In global stories, US President Donald Trump signals he has settled on a successor to Jerome Powell as the next Federal Reserve chief, with Kevin Hassett emerging as a front-runner for the top job at the US Central Bank. Donald Trump doubles down after an Afghan national allegedly killed a National Guard member near the White House, vowing prolonged restrictions on asylum decisions. And US Secretary of State Marco Rubio praises peace discussions with the Ukrainian delegation in Florida, yet warns major hurdles remain to ending Russia's war. Top story this morning, the winter session of Parliament begins today and the government is bringing a heavy economic agenda, 9 key economic bills, including major reforms in insurance, taxation and financial regulation. At the top of the list is the Insurance Laws Amendment Bill 2025, which proposes to raise the FDI limit in insurance from 74% to 100%. The sector has already attracted 82,000 crore rupees in foreign investment, and the government says this is part of a new wave of financial sector reforms. Also listed are 2 bills targeting sin goods. The Central Excise Amendment Bill 2025 will reintroduce excise duty on all tobacco products by replacing the outgoing GST compensation cess. Alongside it, the Health Security National Security Cess Bill will impose a new cess on pan masala manufacturing, as well as market to fund public health and national security. Currently, tobacco and pan masala attract 28% GST plus a compensation cess. Another major proposal is the Securities Market Code Bill 2025, which aims to merge 3 major market laws into a single unified code to streamline India's capital markets. The winter session will also see discussions on the Jan Vishwas bill, which decriminalizes minor offences to improve ease of living as well as doing business. Other bills on the agenda include amendments to the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, National Highways Act, corporate laws and Manipur GST, along with the first batch of supplementary demands for grants for 2025-26. And just ahead of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin, Moscow has moved towards approving a major strategic arrangement that would allow India and Russia to rapidly deploy troops, warships and fighter jets to each other's territories. According to reports, the agreement will act as a military logistics framework enabling swift movement of personnel and equipment for joint exercises, training, humanitarian missions, disaster relief and other mutually agreed operations. India already has similar arrangements with nations including the US, Japan, Australia, France, Singapore and South Korea. Now, President Putin arrives in India for a two-day visit on December 4th and 5th for the 23rd annual summit, where both sides will review bilateral ties, strengthen their strategic, special and privileged strategic partnership and discuss key regional and global issues. The ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict is expected to feature prominently, with Putin likely to share his views on the revised US-backed 28-point peace plan. Now, the meeting comes amid geopolitical pressure, especially after President Donald Trump claimed he convinced India to cut Russian oil imports. Now, against this backdrop, the Modi-Putin talks carry significant strategic weight, with cooperation in defense, nuclear energy, space, trade and technology likely to gain further momentum. On to cyclonic storm Ditwah now, which has moved away from Sri Lanka and is impacting the Tamil Nadu coastline, though the system is gradually weakening as per IMD reports. Now, weather officials say rainfall activity is expected to slowly reduce by today, but not before several regions face intense conditions over the next few hours. The IMD has issued a red alert for 3 districts in Tamil Nadu, along with an orange alert for 7 others, as heavy to very heavy rainfall continues. It's not just Tamil Nadu. Andhra Pradesh is also on alert, with 4 districts under red alert and multiple others under orange alert, while forecasts warn of 4 more days of heavy rain in vulnerable areas. The coastal belts, including Puducherry, are already experiencing rough seas, gusty winds, high tides and persistent rainfall. On Rameswaram Island, downpours have battered the region for more than 2 days, triggering severe waterlogging. In Natarajapuram, home to over 200 fishing families, flooding has turned residential lanes into streams, with rainfall and rainwater entering homes and daily life coming to standstill. Meanwhile, Chengalpattu continues to receive heavy rain, adding to concerns over urban flooding. Temple visuals are also coming in from Nagapattam, where rainfall has entered and rainwater has entered the premises of the Arulmigu Swami temple. Temple authorities say that 3 days of continuous rain have sharply reduced footfall and water is now being pumped out using motors. The IMD says Ditwah is tracking northward, moving parallel to the Tamil Nadu-Puducherry coastline at a speed of about 7 kilometers per hour. By this afternoon and evening, the cyclone is expected to pass through the southwest Bay of Bengal, coming as close as 30 to 70 kilometers from the coastline. On cyclonic storm Ditwah, Vizag Cyclone Warning Center has given out a statement. Listen in.
The cyclonic storm is continuously monitored by the Doppler weather radars at Karaikal and Chennai. Under the influence of the system, rainfall like light to moderate, most likely at the most places over south coastal districts on first day and at many places on second day, and the spatial distribution will decrease over south coastal Andhra Pradesh districts from third day onwards up to fifth day, and thereafter it will be at 1 or 2 places only. And over the north coastal districts, light to moderate rainfall likely at a few places on first day and at many places on second day, and thereafter the spatial distribution will decrease gradually.
Today, 30th November 2025, the cyclonic storm Ditwah lies over southwest Bay of Bengal of North Tamil Nadu and the Puducherry coast, and it is moving at a speed of 12 kilometers per hour for the past 6 hours, and it is lying 110 kilometers southeast of Puducherry, and it is lying about 180 kilometers southeast of Chennai, and it is moving parallelly along the coast of North Tamil Nadu and Puducherry coast, nearly northward and parallel to the coast. And by today evening, it will be coming very closer to Chennai, probably around 30 kilometers from the center of the cyclone. So if we see the impact for Andhra Pradesh, that is for today, 30th November 2025, we'll have light to moderate rains over south coastal Andhra Pradesh and Rayalaseema over many places, with isolated extremely heavy rainfall, especially over Nellore and Prakasam districts. And apart from that, heavy to very heavy rains at isolated places are likely to occur over Tirupati, Annamaya, then Kadapa and Bapatla districts, and also heavy rainfall is likely to occur at 1 or 2 places of.
And moving on now, but staying with Cyclone Ditwah, Sri Lanka continues to battle the devastating aftermath of Cyclone Ditwah as the death toll has now crossed 200, with more than 218 people still missing. Nearly 1 million people across the island have been affected by record rainfall, flash floods and landslides, forcing close to 2 lakh residents into over 1,200 relief shelters. Entire towns remain submerged as river overflow and a dam breach at the Mavil Aru Reservoir in the east worsened flooding is in the low-lying areas. Now, rescue operations are ongoing for the 4th straight day, with more than 24,000 personnel from the police, army and air force deployed to reach stranded families. Over 120 people have already been airlifted by Sri Lankan Air Force helicopters, while around 2,000 residents have been shifted to higher ground for safety. Now, President Anurag Kumar Desasenke has declared a state of emergency to expedite rescue and rehabilitation efforts across districts. Amid the crisis, India's humanitarian mission Operation Sagar Bandhu continues at full scale. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar has confirmed that NDRF teams are working in close cooperation with Sri Lankan authorities, providing relief assistance on the ground. The Indian Air Force has deployed the Mi-17 V5 helicopters in Colombo for rapid HADR operations, while transport aircraft from Thiruvananthapuram and Hindon have been kept on standby for evacuation missions. So far, 2 Indian Air Force aircraft, an IL-76 carrying 247 passengers through Trivandrum and a C-130J with 76 passengers to Delhi, have departed Colombo. Evacuations, though, through commercial airlines are also underway. The High Commissioner of India in Sri Lanka is providing on-ground coordination and assistance to stranded Indian nationals with an emergency help desk operational to facilitate swift returns. Alongside evacuations, relief material including Bhishma medical cubes and essential equipment are being airlifted to assist affected communities. In one of the most daring rescue missions, the Indian Air Force helicopters executed a complex hybrid operation in a mountainous restricted zone at Kotmail. A guard Colombo was winched down to guide stranded civilians across difficult terrain to a makeshift helipad. Now, from there, 24 people, including Indians, foreign nationals and Sri Lankan citizens, were flown safely to Colombo. In parallel, 3 critically injured victims were airlifted for emergency care, while 40 Sri Lankan army personnel were transported to landslide-affected areas to boost rescue efforts. As Sri Lanka confronts one of the worst weather disasters in recent years, Operation Sagar Bandhu continues to underscore India's commitment to humanitarian support, delivering aid, evacuating survivors, and standing shoulder to shoulder with the neighbor in this time of crisis. And moving on now, amid ongoing discussions about immigration policies and the importance of attracting global talent, Tesla CEO Elon Musk acknowledged the significant contributions of Indian talent to the United States, noting that the country has significantly benefited from skilled Indians. In an interview with Nikhil Kamath, co-founder of Zerodha, Musk discussed immigration policies and entrepreneurship. Musk's comments highlight the value of diversity and the impact of Indian professionals in various sectors, including technology and innovation. Now, many individuals of Indian origin have made significant contributions to the US economy, driving growth and innovation, Elon Musk told podcaster Nikhil Kamath. He emphasized the need for balanced immigration policies, criticizing the Biden administration's lack of border controls. Musk also said that open borders were detrimental as they allowed even criminals to enter the United States. Elon Musk addressed concerns that talented immigrants are taking jobs from native-born US citizens, saying he's unsure about the validity of this perception. Now, based on his experience, he believes there's a scarcity of talented people, suggesting that skilled immigrants are filling gaps rather than taking jobs. During the conversation, the Tesla CEO also said that his partner and Neuralink executive Shivan Zils is half Indian, adding that the middle name of one of his sons with Zillis is Sekhar, named after the Indian-American physicist and Nobel laureate Subramaniam Chandrasekhar. And on to the IPO frenzy on the Wall Street now. The initial public offering of SoftBank-backed e-commerce platform Meesho is set to open this week on Wednesday, the 3rd of December. The IPO is commanding a grey market premium of 40 rupees already. Taking into consideration the upper end of the price band and the current Meesho IPO GMP, the shares of the company are expected to list at 151 rupees apiece. Now, this is a premium of about 36% as compared to Meesho's IPO price band. Remember, the price band is set between 105 to 111 rupees per share, and the lot size of the Meesho IPO is 135 shares. A Meesho IPO is a combination of fresh issue of 38.29 crore shares and an offer for sale of 10.55 crore shares. The public offer is a book-build issue amounting to 5,421 crore rupees. Now, the Meesho IPO share allotment date is likely on Monday, December 8th. Now, credit of shares to successful bidders will be done the day after on December 9th, while initiation of refunds to unsuccessful investors will also be done on the same day. Now, shares of Meesho are set to list on BSE and NSE on Wednesday, December 10th. Remember, Meesho is a multi-sided technology platform driving e-commerce in India by bringing together 4 key stakeholders, namely consumers, sellers, logistics partners, and content creators. It emerged as India's largest, in fact, largest in terms of number of placed orders and annual transacting users among e-commerce players in India in the last 12-month period ending September 30th. Now, in FY25, Meesho connected over 5 lakh transacting sellers with 199 million annual transacting users, facilitating 1.8 billion placed orders. The company's net merchandise value grew almost 30% year-on-year to nearing 30,000 crore rupees in the last financial year, following a 21% growth in the previous financial year, that's FY24. And staying with the IPO buzz, home and furnishings company Wakefit Innovations is set to launch its own IPO on December 8th, comprising a fresh issue of shares worth 377 crore rupees. The IPO of the Bengaluru-based company will conclude on December 10th, and anchor investors will be allocated shares on December 5th, according to the red herring prospectus. The company's maiden public offering is a contribution of fresh issue of equity shares aggregating to up to 377 crore rupees and an offer for sale of 4.67 crore shares by selling shareholders. Wakefit proposes to utilize the proceeds from the fresh issue worth 31 crore rupees for setting up 117 new stores. It will also use 15.4 crore rupees towards purchase of new equipment and machinery, 161 crore rupees for expenditure towards lease and sublease rent and license fee payments for existing stores. Additionally, a massive 108 crore rupees is expected to be used for marketing and advertisement expenses for enhancing the awareness and visibility of the brand, and the remaining amount will be used for general corporate purposes. On the financial front, Wakefit reported revenue from operations of 724 crore rupees and a profit of 35.5 crore rupees for the first 6 months of this financial year, which ended on September 30th. Remember, Wakefit was incorporated in 2016 as one of the fastest homegrown player in the home and furnishings market in India. Its facilities are equipped with imported machinery and automation technologies such as robotic arms and roller belts, which streamline the production process and also reduce waste. It's time to slip into a very short break, but markets are once again on a record high. Remember, they had touched the record high intraday on Friday, but after the solid Q2 GDP numbers that came in at 8.2%, Sensex right now trading a few points, in fact 65 points above that 86,000 level. We'll bring you all the details about the mood on the Lal Street with Rohit Srivastav on the other side of the break. Keep watching News 9.
लाख का हॉस्पिटल बिल है, इतने पैसे कहाँ से आएंगे?
पैसों की चिंता आप मत कीजिए पापा।
मैम, सर का हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस क्लेम अप्रूव हो गया है।
आप
पॉलिसी बाजार।
पॉलिसी बाजार पर 0 GST के साथ अब 1 करोड़ का हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस सिर्फ 550 रुपए महीने से शुरू।
What is speed? Do you ever see it? Or is it something you feel? Speed, it's relative. The more you speed up, the more the world slows down. And when you are fast enough, everything becomes still. That's when you see the world as it truly is. Servo Hypersport F5, when speed is your default.
A resurgent India is racing towards the Viksit Bharat goal, braving global economic headwinds. Bulletproofing our economy from these uncertainties are Bharat's homegrown businesses. Powered by tech-led innovation, Indian entrepreneurs are truly scaling up, riding the next wave of disruption with AI and cloud to break into the big global league. TV9 Network in association with SAP presents Visionaries of Viksit Bharat, a series celebrating inspirational business leaders shaping tomorrow. Watch them take an iconic leap at Visionaries of Viksit Bharat conclaves. Exclusively on News 9.
ये बेस्ट है मैम।
पर पहले वाला क्यों नहीं?
अजय भाई, this one's for you. बिरला ओपस एश्योरेंस देने के लिए।
ऐसा क्या है इसमें?
एडवांस क्वालिटी। 1 साल में पेंट को कुछ भी हुआ तो पेंटिंग वापस करके देंगे।
वापस करके देंगे।
वो भी free.
पटेल भाई, you're a rock star.
क्वालिटी पे इतना कॉन्फिडेंस, इसलिए बिरला ओपस एश्योरेंस रजिस्टर करो birlaopus.com पर।
Eastern India's first Business and Economy Literature Fest 2025 on 20th and 21st December at Taj Tal Kutir, Kolkata. EIILM Kolkata presents a Business and Economy Literature Fest 2025. Curation and ideation partner Story Nest.
आराम से हाँ। सामान देना भैया।
अब आगे क्या करना है? वो बिट्टू की पर्ची में देखो ना, कहाँ गई पर्ची? नमस्ते
जी।
हाँ, मुझे पता है वो पर्ची में क्या लिखा होता है। आप चलिए मेरे साथ। व्हीलचेयर, ये आपका और ये हाँ। आपका। पर्ची में शॉपिंग की बात तो जरूर लिखी होती है। थोड़ी पेट पूजा की बात कोई पर्ची में ना लिखे, ऐसा हो सकता है? टिफिन लाया। थैंक यू। अरे पर्ची मिल गई।
पर्ची में तो ये सब लिखा ही नहीं था।
हम है ना आपकी पर्ची।
सिर्फ वर्ल्ड क्लास एयरपोर्ट्स नहीं चलाते हैं, आपके सफर में हम सफर बन जाते हैं। अदानी हम करके दिखाते हैं।
Welcome back. You're watching News 9 and it's time now to get you a mood on the Lal Street, and as expected markets have had a solid opening. This is coming in especially after the solid Q2 8.2% growth rate that was released and announced on Friday, and as expected, in fact even the gift nifty indicators were suggesting markets had a solid start. In fact 10 minutes into trading they have slipped a little bit, but as markets opened this morning you had Sensex at about 86,065 points and you also had Nifty reaching once again its lifetime high, which it had intraday touched on Friday, but this morning it even breached the Friday levels and opened at about 26,325. But in the first 10 minutes or so, you're seeing a little bit of profit taking place on the tables, with Sensex right now a little under the 86,000 mark, and the Nifty 50 inching hopefully closer towards the 26,300 odd levels. Meanwhile, the small cap and the mid cap space is also looking healthy. We are seeing solid gains, in fact, in the small cap space. In fact, the small cap 100 index is up about more than half a percentage point or so. Let's pull up the Nifty 50 heat map and see which are the sectors which are adding to these gains. And in fact, it's a sea of green, as one can see, and you've got pretty much, the entire space, barring just a handful of stocks, not more than 5 stocks that I can see out of the entire 50 chart table of the Nifty 50, which are in red. Everything else seems to be in green, the shades of green and the varying degrees of the rise in question this morning. So you've got SBI up about 1.1% or so. You've got ONGC up almost 1%. You've got the IT pack performing really well, and this was coming, of course, as cues from what we saw on Friday at Wall Street, and those cues reflecting here healthily on the Indian IT story as well. ITC expectedly down about 1%. Remember, ITC is down this morning with news coming that the reintroduction of cess is likely to make tobacco products more expensive for users, and this is likely to be tabled in Parliament in the winter session, which begins today. We've got Rohit Srivastav joining us this morning to help us make sense of what is the mood on the Lal Street and where does the story go from here. Rohit, first up, the bumper Q2 GDP that we saw coming in at 8.2%, sure to lift the sentiment on the Lal Street, isn't it?
Yes, definitely it does. It further stamps the idea that the measures taken by the government on the GST front and on taxes during the year are beginning to play out, and creates expectations that the slight improvement we saw in the second quarter of results over expectations will further improve as we go into Q3, which means the January numbers will show a further uptick going forward. So we are slowly seeing that curve from the bottom end of earnings growth to a higher trajectory, and the measures have really helped in, and the GDP data really shows that. So yes, it's something that definitely adds weight to the idea that the markets can, carry ahead into the next quarter.
Right. So what we understand from the fine print of the GDP report card that was published on Friday seems to be the fact that consumption has picked up, especially in rural areas. There's an uptick in manufacturing activity, and then there's also, of course, government spending, government capex that continues. Now, as far as the manufacturing activity in the uptick that we have seen in the month of, in fact, in the second quarter, do you think that's expected to continue even in the month of November, because PMI data is expected shortly?
Yes, I think, usually these things are not a 1 month rub-off because first you get a spike in demand, and then that carries forward into future production. So it will continue to show up in November, December data. Then by January, you will start questioning what happens to the next quarter, and then you will have the annual budget. So again, people will then get focused on, what the measures are going to be for the coming financial year.
That's right. But there also seems to be some buoyancy now with respect to perhaps, some people estimating, in fact, economists also saying that perhaps the Indian economy is overheated. Would you call it overheated at this point? Because you've seen H1 growth coming in now at an aggregate of about 8%. So keeping that theory of potentially the markets already being overheated, what do you expect the RBI's stance and decision on rates to be in the upcoming MPC?
No, I think overheated is a strong view to really have on 1 month of data. If you look at the entire year in perspective, both earnings and GDP growth went through a slide on the way down for months together. And that's the reason the markets saw a correction. And that's also the reason why the market is significantly fractured. When we actually look at a 6-month or 12-month return data, you find that the number of stocks making new 52-week highs are probably 20-30% of the entire basket, and not the entire lot. There are a lot of stocks that are still languishing, and that is why you don't see the wild enthusiasm you would have seen at an all-time high in the market. So the slowdown is what has been priced in pockets of the market. It may not reflect on Nifty, but the fact that it has been reflected means that you're not overheated, So overheated is a strong view. I think this is just the beginning of the turn in the earnings cycle. So we are in the very, very early stage of that happening.
Okay. And what do you think RBI's rate decision should be? What do you expect the RBI MPC to do? Do you think there is time for cutting another quarter, of a percentage point, 25 basis points, given the fact that inflation has been really low?
No, that's true. 25 basis points, I think, is almost priced in that they are going to do it. We can argue this month or the next, but I think it's about time they do it now, given all the data we have on inflation and the prior slowdown. Their only contention the last time was that the front loading of 50 bips had not really trickled down. That's what they said in the last MPC meeting. So that is the main call they're going to be taking. If they feel that yes, the transmission has happened, then there will be more rate cuts. That much is clear. But I don't think it should end with only 25 basis points rate cut, given that the US is also going to get started on more rate cuts in the months ahead. We are looking at a rate cut cycle, not just one rate cut, I think, in the months that follow. And that's one of the future triggers also for the markets and interest rate sensitive stocks.
All right. And coming back to Nifty 50, right now the levels that we are looking at, about 26,000, give or take 300. What do you think the next sort of resistance for Nifty is likely to be before one can be assured that, the euphoria of the bulls is back on the streets?
So at a very narrow level, I mean, if we just take a trend line of the last 3-4 highs, getting past, I think, 26,320 odd would be a sign that, we've gone past this level. But if you do the same thing for Bank Nifty, it has already happened. So it's sort of leading the way.
Okay.
In Nifty, once we do that, I think we will then start looking at 26,800 and the potential of crossing 27,000 next. I think once we start trading well above 26,320.
All right. I want to just shift focus now to a few stocks and a few sectors rather. I'm looking at the FMCG space right now, and ITC rightly reacting negatively with news coming in that the winter session of Parliament is going to introduce the bill where there is going to be cess added in addition to the sin tax, the sin GST on tobacco products. Investors of ITC, is it time for them to worry, or do you think this particular sector is pretty much agnostic of price hikes and demand hardly ever falls down?
Well, that's been true historically. We've seen so many tax hikes on the tobacco segment. There are some things that people will consume anyway because of addiction. So that's, I don't think that is also the largest part of their business, because they've diversified into so many different areas. So they've sort of de-risked the entire portfolio. But having said that, when we think of FMCG in general, and we think of consumption, I think within consumption, I would look at the non-FMCG space. FMCG stocks by themselves are growing much more slowly in terms of earnings relative to valuations, and therefore the return outlook might not be so great. Even if they do go up, there may be better pockets, to play the consumption theme, including things like auto stocks or, consumer durables.
All right. So auto stocks, consumer durable seems to be an addition to FMCG as far as views from Rohit go this morning. Rohit, I want to just spend a minute also discussing the upcoming IPOs with you and what your advice to retail investors would be. Let's begin first with Meesho, and Meesho already commanding a grey market premium of about 40 rupees. Remember the price band of about 105 to 111 rupees. Right now, looking at the GMP expected to list at about 151. How bullish are you on this space? I don't want specific recommendation on this company from you, Rohit, but specifically the e-commerce space. We've seen the e-commerce space also get disrupted by the quick commerce space. So looking at Meesho right now, what is your view on the e-com space and your sort of word of advice or caution to retail investors looking at participating in this IPO?
So what has happened with most of the companies that have listed in this space is that they've actually seen a correction before finding a floor. The reason could be that, valuations tend to be higher, many times 8 times to 10 times sales, and then market wants to really reset that before it goes ahead. So one thing is the trade, which means you apply for the IPO, you get a listing, you're able to get out on the listing and make some trading gains. So that's a strategy that a lot of people follow, which is fine. So you can continue to do that because this is not a market which is, we are not in a bear market where usually such gains get wiped out.
Right.
So you might still make trading gains, but when it comes to investing with a 2-year, 3-year time horizon, it's always better, I think, to let it get listed, let the market find its own level, and then consider investment from a long-term perspective.
All right, and Meesho continues to be one of those e-commerce companies which has not yet declared a profit. It in fact continues to take losses. I think a minor loss of about 35 crore rupees or so in the last financial year. But given the fact that investors, serious long-term investors, do look at profitability as a matrix, how significant do you think in this space of e-commerce is profitability going to be?
No, it is significant. See, everybody's betting on the idea that if you have a big market share in terms of revenue, then you'll eventually show profitability, something that Zomato had to go through. They got listed at a high valuation, then they didn't have profitability for some time, and now they started to show profits and the stock rebounded. So the initial listing is often happening on the market cap to sales metric, which means people are trying to price it between 10 times to 8 times the revenue that you're actually earning. But the question eventually is, are you going to show profits? Because if that doesn't show up, then you will actually see the stock getting hammered. So that is the serious risk in buying a stock simply based on revenue and market share.
All right, and a quick word on Wakefit. Wakefit has also announced that its IPO is going to open next week. December 8th will be open until December 10th. Now, we are talking about a company which is reporting profits, at least for the first half of this financial year. It has reported profit of about 35 crore rupees or so. So, again, you're mentioning consumer, consumption stocks, not necessarily FMCG. You did mention auto. What about, semi-durables as mattresses, home furnishings? How bullish are you on that space?
That's a continuation trend. So yeah, if you get, if you have a boom in real estate, for example, then you do see a boom follow up in most of the consumption that happens behind real estate, whether it's tiles, whether it's, home furnishing and so on. So it's really a call on what is happening at that level in the economy. But again, being an IPO, the attitude to the IPOs have to be the same, whether irrespective of the sector, that you're either playing the trading bet on the IPO or you're going to go for it long term. And longer term, you want the market to, price it, settle it before you really jump onto it, because you don't know where they are in the earnings cycle, because a lot of earnings do happen close to IPOs sometimes, and it can lead to peak earnings being reported. So that's again a risk. So there are various types of risks. I always prefer to let companies get listed before we take a long-term view.
All right. So no long-term view coming right now. Rohit Srivastava, thank you so much for your input on everything that's happening in the markets as well as this IPO frenzy that investors find themselves in. Thank you so much for your time this morning. And staying with markets, but pivoting from the Dalal Street to the Wall Street. Now, U.S. markets edged higher in a shortened post-Thanksgiving trading day on Friday, helped by gains in retail sector and a late rebound in tech stocks. Expectations for a Federal Reserve rate cut in December also strengthened, lifting sentiment across equities. Take a look at what happened in Wall Street on Friday.
U.S. stocks climbed on Friday, with the Dow gaining 0.6%, the S&P 500 up around 0.5%, and the Nasdaq adding about 0.2%. That's after a day of thin trading volume during a shortened session on Black Friday, driven by gains in retail and a recovery in tech stocks. And after futures trading was temporarily disrupted in the morning following a CME Group outage that had frozen currencies, commodities, and equity contracts around the globe. Expectations for a Federal Reserve rate cut in December strengthened throughout the week, helping underpin sentiment across equity markets. Chief market strategist at the wealth consulting group Tally Leger says U.S. markets could be set for an upbeat year-end.
So we continue to like the pro-cyclical, economy-sensitive areas of the stock market that really took it on the chin in the latest drawdown. I'm really talking specifically about information technology and consumer discretionary. The thesis really is continued Fed rate cuts, softening bond yields, even mortgage rates that have come down alongside a weaker trend in oil prices, gasoline, and a broader wealth effect that I think is really supporting the upper strata of the household sector.
All of the major S&P 500 sectors were up except healthcare, with pharmaceutical Eli Lilly down 2.6%. Intel helped lead the S&P 500 with a 10.2% gain, after a TF International securities analyst said the company would begin shipping Apple's lowest-end M processor as early as 2027. But the three main U.S. stock indexes were lower for the month, reflecting growing concerns about stretched AI and tech valuations, with investors taking profits and reducing exposure.
All right, with that, we will slip into a short break, but a lot more stories coming up on the other side. You're watching News 9.
$25 लाख का हॉस्पिटल बिल है, इतने पैसे कहाँ से आएंगे?
पैसों की चिंता आप मत कीजिए पापा।
मैम, सर का हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस क्लेम अप्रूव हो गया है।
आप
पॉलिसी बाजार।
पॉलिसी बाजार पर 0 GST के साथ अब 1 करोड़ का हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस सिर्फ 550 रुपए महीने से शुरू।
Eastern India's first Business and Economy Literature Fest 2025 on 20th and 21st December at Taj Tal Kutir, Kolkata. EIILM Kolkata presents a Business and Economy Literature Fest 2025. Curation and ideation partner Story Nest.
आराम से हाँ। सामान देना भैया।
अब आगे क्या करना है? वो बिट्टू की पर्ची में देखो ना, कहाँ गई पर्ची?
नमस्ते
जी।
हाँ? मुझे पता है वो पर्ची में क्या लिखा होता है। आप चलिए मेरे साथ। व्हीलचेयर, ये आपका और ये आपका। पर्ची में शॉपिंग की बात तो जरूर लिखी होती है। थोड़ी पेट पूजा की बात कोई पर्ची में ना लिखे, ऐसा हो सकता है? टिफिन
थैंक यू।
अरे पर्ची मिल गई।
पर्ची में तो ये सब लिखा ही नहीं था।
हम है ना आपकी पर्ची।
सिर्फ वर्ल्ड क्लास एयरपोर्ट्स नहीं चलाते हैं, आपके सफर में हम सफर बन जाते हैं। अदानी, हम करके दिखाते हैं।
यही मौका है बिजनेस को बढ़ाने का, पर पैसा।
अपनी सुपर पावर यूज करने का टाइम आ गया।
अब टेंशन मत लीजिए, IIFL फाइनेंस से झटपट गोल्ड लोन लीजिए और बिजनेस आगे बढ़ाइए।
आपके जैसे सुपर हीरोज ऐसी छोटी मोटी प्रॉब्लम से थोड़ी ना रुकते हैं, इसीलिए लाइफ जब भी आगे बढ़ने का मौका दे तो अपनी सुपर पावर, अपना गोल्ड यूज करिए और IIFL फाइनेंस से गोल्ड लोन लीजिए। IIFL फाइनेंस करता है सीधी बात।
Welcome back. You're watching News 9. This is Morning Brief at 9. Let's talk about all the stories coming in from the United States. Let's begin with the war of words between US President Donald Trump and Fed Chair Jerome Powell. Well, US President Donald Trump hinted on Sunday that he has finally selected the next Federal Reserve chair. The announcement comes after White House advisor Kevin Hassett said he would like to serve as the next Fed chair if chosen, amid reports of him being the front runner to replace Jerome Powell next year.
You know who I'm going to pick, yeah.
Oh, tell us.
Kevin Hassett.
I'm not telling you. We'll be announcing it. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. President.
This is a rocky flight.
One.
We're going to get out of here before something happens.
And US President not really naming Kevin Hassett, but that's the view that's coming in from the US right now for the next Fed chair. Well, moving on now, US President Donald Trump said on Sunday that his administration intends to maintain a pause on asylum decisions for a long time after an Afghan national allegedly shot 2 National Guard members near the White House, killing one of them. Now, when asked to specify how long would the pause last, Trump said he had no time limit in mind for the measure, which the Department of Homeland Security says is linked to at least a list of 19 countries already facing U.S. travel restrictions.
We don't want those people. We have enough problems. We don't want those people.
Is that a year, 2 years?
No time limit. But it could be a long time. It means get people out that are in our country. Get them out of here. I want to get them out. We got a lot of people in our country that shouldn't be here. And they came in through Biden. And he was the worst president in the history of our country. But the single biggest thing he did was allow millions of people into our country that shouldn't be here. Drug dealers, prisons were opened up and allowed to come into our country.
And US authorities believe the Afghan immigrant accused of ambushing National Guard members in Washington, D.C. was not radicalized until he came to the United States. Homeland Security Kristi Noem said this on Sunday.
U.S. investigators now believe the Afghan immigrant accused of ambushing National Guard members in Washington, D.C. was not radicalized until after he came to the United States. That's according to Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, who spoke to television news programs on Sunday. Authorities accused 29-year-old Rahmanullah Lakanwal of shooting 2 members of the National Guard just blocks from the White House last week. The attack killed Sarah Beckstrom and critically wounded her fellow guardsman Andrew Wolf. Noem told NBC News investigators believed Lakanwal was radicalized after settling in Washington state and said they wanted to talk to those who interacted with him, including his family members. Lakanwal entered the U.S. in 2021 as part of the Biden administration's mass evacuation of Afghans who aided U.S. forces. A government file reviewed by Reuters showed Lakanwal was granted asylum in April by Trump's administration.
At Webster County High School, Sarah was the kindest student teachers hoped for.
At a memorial service in West Virginia on Saturday, people in the tight-knit communities of Webster County and Somerville County gathered to honor Beckstrom and bid her farewell. Greg Burleson is the principal of Somerton High School.
She chose a path of honor and responsibility, and she did it with humility and grace.
After Wednesday's attack, the Trump administration took steps to clamp down on some legal immigration, including a freeze on processing all asylum applications. Noem said on Sunday that immigration officials would consider deporting people with active asylum cases if it was warranted.
And US President Donald Trump said on Saturday that the airspace above and surrounding Venezuela should be considered closed in its entirety, but gave no further details, stirring anxiety and confusion as Washington ramps up pressure on President Nicolas Maduro's government. Take a look.
Venezuelans in Caracas expressed discontent after U.S. President Donald Trump on Saturday declared that the airspace above and surrounding the country should be considered closed in its entirety. I think it's unfair, says resident Manuel Romero, adding that, quote, Venezuelans are not to blame, but they are the ones who pay the consequences. Another resident, Carmen Castillo, says it affects us a lot because many people abroad wanted to come home for Christmas, while others in Venezuela had plans to travel elsewhere to see family. Trump announced the closure in a Truth Social post, but gave no further details. Venezuela's government condemned his comments, describing them as a colonialist threat against the country's sovereignty and incompatible with international law. U.S. officials contacted by Reuters said they were surprised by Trump's announcement and are unaware of any ongoing U.S. military operations to enforce the closure. The Pentagon did not respond to requests for comment, and the White House did not provide any further explanation. Saturday's announcement follows months of U.S. strikes on alleged drug boats off Venezuela's coast and is Washington's latest way of ramping up pressure on Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, who the Trump administration has portrayed as having a role in supplying illegal drugs that have killed Americans. Maduro has denied having any links to the illegal drug trade. Reuters has reported that options under U.S. consideration included attempting to overthrow Maduro, and that the U.S. military is poised for a new phase of operations after a massive military buildup in the Caribbean. In Puerto Rico on Saturday, U.S. military aircraft were seen active at the former Roosevelt Roads Naval Base. Trump told military service members earlier this week that the U.S. would very soon begin land operations to stop suspected Venezuelan drug traffickers.
And a fresh round of negotiations aimed at ending the war in Ukraine is underway, and U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says he's hopeful. Now, Rubio stressed that the goal isn't just stopping the fighting, but ensuring Ukraine emerges sovereign, independent, and positioned for real prosperity. Ukraine's team is now led by Rustem Umerov, the new chief negotiator and head of Ukraine's National Security Council. He thanked the U.S. for standing firmly with Kyiv, hearing us, supporting us, walking beside us, quote-unquote, he said, and expressed confidence in a productive meeting ahead. The shift in leadership follows the resignation of Andriy Yemkov, who stepped down on Friday amid a corruption scandal. Also present on the US side, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner representing the White House. The talks are being held at Shell Bay, a private hub near Miami. President Zelensky has said he expects the outcomes of earlier meetings with the US administration in Geneva, including Ukraine's counteroffer to US proposals, to be finalized in these talks.
The end goal is obviously not just the end of the war, obviously that's central and fundamental. We want to see the end of the killing and the death and the suffering, and I'm sure the Ukrainian side, I know they do as well, they want peace. But it's also about securing an end to the war that leaves Ukraine sovereign and independent and with an opportunity at real prosperity. So we expect to make even more progress today, and we're grateful that you would travel all the way here to Florida. We apologize for the rain. It's not supposed to be raining, but there's only certain things we can control.
South African President Cyril Ramaphosa dismissed US President Donald Trump's warning that Pretoria could be excluded from next year's G20 summit, calling the remarks baseless and insisting South Africa remains a founding member of the group. Listen in.
Earlier this week, we formally handed over the G20 presidency for 2026 to the United States, observing the appropriate diplomatic protocols. A few days ago, President Donald Trump made a statement to the effect that South Africa would not be invited to participate in the G20 in the United States. He repeated untrue statements about genocide against Afrikaners and the confiscation of land from white people in our country. We must make it clear that South Africa is one of the founding members of the G20, and South Africa is therefore a member of the G20 in its own name and right. We will continue to participate as a full, active and constructive member of the G20. Despite the challenges and misunderstandings that have arisen between South Africa and the United States, South Africa remains a firm and an unwavering friend of the American people.
And moving to Israel now, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has taken the extraordinary step of asking President Isaac Herzog for a pardon in his years-long corruption trial. Now, Netanyahu, who has been facing corruption charges, says the proceedings are obstructing his ability to govern and that ending the trial would serve Israel's national interest. Opposition leaders have sharply criticized the move. Now, Yair Lapid says no pardon should be considered unless Netanyahu admits to wrongdoing, expresses remorse and steps away from his political life. Take a look.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has asked the country's president for a pardon in his long-running corruption trial. In a video statement released on Sunday, he said the criminal proceedings were hindering his ability to govern and that a pardon would be good for Israel. Netanyahu, the country's longest-serving prime minister, denies the charges he faces of bribery, fraud and breach of trust. His lawyer said in a letter to President Isaac Herzog's office that the prime minister still believes the legal proceedings would result in a complete acquittal. In response, opposition leader Yair Lapid argued Netanyahu cannot be pardoned without admitting guilt. In a video addressing the president, he said Netanyahu must also express remorse and immediately retire from political life. The case has drawn the attention of a powerful ally. US President Donald Trump wrote to Herzog this month, urging him to consider pardoning Netanyahu. Pardons in Israel are typically granted only after legal proceedings have ended and the accused has been convicted. However, Netanyahu's lawyers argued the president can intervene when public interest is at stake. They said the cases against Netanyahu had deepened societal divisions and that ending the trial was necessary for national reconciliation. They also said the increasingly frequent court hearings were a burden to the prime minister's attempts to govern. Netanyahu was indicted in 2019 in 3 separate but related cases. They center around accusations that he granted favors to prominent business figures in exchange for gifts and sympathetic media coverage. President Herzog's office described Netanyahu's request as extraordinary with significant implications. It said the president will responsibly and sincerely consider the request, after receiving relevant opinions.
And with that, we come to an end of this edition of Morning Brief at 9. If you have been, thank you so much for watching. But news continues right here on News 9, so stay tuned.
Ever wondered what makes the night come alive? Where flavors, lights and laughter dance in harmony. When the sun sets, stories rise of kitchens, cocktails and charisma. What makes your city's night so happening? Let's find out.
Good service, good food and a good location.